Hi, this is Rosie with InnerBrilliance Coaching, and I'm excited to welcome you all today to this interview series I call Be Perfectly You, which is based on my signature coaching program. And obviously, it's not about being perfect, but it's about being the real you so that you can shine and attract all that you desire in your life, but in a much more natural way. So, just a little background on me before we get started. I've been a certified life and career coach for over 14 years. And previously to that, I worked in advertising and marketing for 18 years. So, I work with high achieving clients these days to help them get results while feeling happier every step of the way. So, I'm really excited about this interview series where we're going to meet with a variety of experts to help people like you and the audience feel like you can have success and happiness in your life, work, and love. And today we're meeting with Alaciel Torres. Hi, Alaciel. How are you?
Hi, Rosie. Hi, good afternoon. I'm doing great. How about you?
I am good. I'm excited to get chatting. I just was going to
Yeah.
tell everyone how we met and a little bit about you. So,
Perfect. Yeah, happy to be here.
we were just reminiscing that we actually met at a live networking event, if you remember those, a couple of years ago. And since we met, I've been so impressed with what she's done in her career and her journey. And I'm excited to have her share more about herself, her journey, and her tips to making career changes, especially on LinkedIn. So, thought share a little bit about her background first. She is from San Diego, but for some reason has decided to move to the Windy City. Thank you for coming. Um, she's an experienced storyteller, creative, and innovative thinker. And when she's not working or keeping up with social media, I love this part. She enjoys her mornings watching Let's Make a Deal and The Price is Right with a cup of coffee or tea. I love that about you. I'm laughing. I want to know more, maybe when we get off the recording. And and it sounds like during the pandemic, I think many of us have done this, but you've been spending a lot more time going on walks and appreciating your neighborhood a little bit more. So that is wonderful to hear. Um, with that said, I thought maybe you could just give us, a quick description of what you do on a day-to-day basis for work now.
Yeah, no, thanks. Yeah, right now I've been working for Northwestern Medicine actually for the past 3 years. And I'm on the small but mighty social media team helping to run all the social channels for the health system. So for people who aren't as familiar with Northwestern Medicine, it's one of the larger health systems here in Illinois, anchored by Northwestern Memorial Hospital, which is the main hospital here in downtown. Um, so it's been a great experience for the past few years helping to communicate to these audience members, because I laugh because before working here, I never would have thought, like, why would anyone follow a hospital on social media? Like, if people don't even enjoy going to a hospital, like, why would they even follow one? But little do you know, 3 years later, this channel has been quite useful and quite really needed for a lot of people from Illinois, or just people who are just, who are patients or know about the brand, coming to our channels for information. So it's been uh, definitely a great learning over the last 10 months, being able to use our platform to leverage COVID-19 communications.
Right. I mean, what a unique experience in general. To your point, who would have
Hmm.
thought, who follows a hospital and then something like this happens? And even before this happened, I would see your posts and felt like there was information or something interesting you'd share. I'd just learn in general about healthcare systems or how you're communicating on a social media platform like LinkedIn. And then, as you said, wow, these last several months with the pandemic going on, I'm
Hmm.
sure you've learned a lot. And I know you have so much to share with us. So I'm excited to dive
Yeah.
in. I thought I'd start with, since I work with, and my audience is a lot of high achievers who are looking to get results, but I know we can always be so focused on getting things done that we sort of lose track of the
Hmm.
joy along the journey, for lack of better words. And so I was just curious, what would you say is your approach to helping high achievers?
Yeah, I mean, I guess being one myself in a way to a certain degree, there's, I think, always um, I think there's always the expectation that, right away people expect you for you to know everything because you've always been so like a quick learner. And that's always been kind of my approach too. But I think my approach for any high achiever is just to kind of first to kind of ground yourself in a way and understand, okay, where do you currently land and wherever you're kind of thinking about. And then and if there's anything you don't know, then accept it and then just start learning. I grew up in a household of educators. My parents were teachers, and they're very much the wanting me to be a self-learner and be self-taught. So I think that's something that high achievers also align with is, they achieve because they want to learn. So setting those realistic expectations for yourself that you won't always know everything, and if you don't learn it right away, then there's a chance that you can also continue to learn more and continue to be successful.
I love that approach so much. It's really what I use with my clients, is accepting where you are and then moving forward, right? And people ask me, I know sometimes when I'm doing coaching, people assume I'm there to push them, but really that doesn't work, right? It's
right.
Accept where you are and then let's move you forward. And it's you can still be a high achiever, but you don't have to kill yourself in the process. And by creating those, what we'll call realistic expectations or stretch goals, but so that involves some realism, right? And then maybe a little bit of expanding your boundaries, you can be much more successful and I think motivated along the way, which
right. And at least for me too, then you're able to then pass that on. And that's always my thing too, is like once you learn it, once you understand it, how can you help others also? I think to me, at least, that's always a part of my philosophy as well.
I love that. Yes. And you have been so generous with sharing with me. So I appreciate that. All your learnings coming across. So speaking of, I thought, originally I thought we would just talk about your experience on LinkedIn, because you have had such great experience, not only with Northwestern, but also with your own career journey. But then we started talking some more, and I know that you have some great tips to share about just generally starting off on your career journey. So if you're okay with maybe sharing a few tips about that, then we can go into specifically how you might apply some of it to LinkedIn.
Yeah, for sure. I think I can start off by saying that, I started really paying attention more to LinkedIn when I was in college, which I think is something that most some do, just part of that process and the career fairs and all that. So I started kind of a long time ago, but even then I wasn't paying too much attention to it. I just kind of did it to kind of check off a box because that's what career people will tell you to do. There's just these initial steps you have to do. But it wasn't until really I was able to work more in social media where I understood more and I had more time to kind of play around with it, the value of LinkedIn and the platform, just like anyone who is wanting to network or build relationships with people you can communicate with, that also on a digital platform. I think that's just the way people communicate now, and there's a way to also promote yourself in that regard and make that first impression. I think that's something that I first had to learn for myself too, that first impressions are made by a search engine, and that's what people expect too. When you Google a restaurant, when you Google a movie, you Google a hospital, or a doctor, you want to get a good first impression. And I think that's what I learned when I first started paying more attention to LinkedIn, is that just creating the best profile so that you can make the best first impression for a recruiter, for someone like that.
Absolutely. I love what you're saying, because whenever I'm on social media, since my background's in advertising marketing, I learned a lot about it in my other job. And then I was trying to always apply it in an authentic way to my coaching, right? And how do I communicate what I do? And sometimes it feels, at least back in the day, it felt a little bit awkward. What do I share? How do I share it? And I always try to go back to real life scenarios. Like if I were to meet someone right now, what would I say, right? Would I be screaming about something totally personal right off the bat? Would I be just, having people get to know me at first and then share more personal information down the road? And I love what you just said about it's a first impression. I do that. I'll go and Google, doctors and restaurants actually a lot. And I think to your point, LinkedIn now is just such a much more, you see so much more interaction on there. It's important to have a presence. It is where you can have your resume and all that information. And it is the first impression. It's a quick snapshot. And I think we know that's what recruiters at least they used to do, right? Look at your resume, skim it. And
Mhm.
now people are probably going to LinkedIn, skimming it. Do they have any recommendations or anything like that? I think
Yeah.
that's a great way to capture it is, hey, what's the first impression you want to make on someone who could potentially be hiring you or thinking about,
Mhm.
they might want to hire down the road, and vice versa, as companies out there, right? It's their first impression to
Mhm.
you.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit more about the steps in terms of the career search. Like maybe what's the first thing you would do? Because I know that's isn't it how you got your job at Northwestern is through this
Yeah.
process you took, which I love.
Yes.
If you'd be open to sharing a little bit about what you did, because it sounds similar to
Yeah.
what I tell my clients to do, and I think it's so helpful. To some people, I think it's obvious, and to others, it's like, oh, right, we need to do this. So,
Yeah.
yeah, do you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, for me, yeah, I kind of followed like a few steps mentally that kind of helped me tackle this issue, wanting to find a new job. Really solely on LinkedIn. I know there's other sites like Glassdoor and Indeed, and I think you can apply those similar steps to those other sites if you feel more comfortable with those. But with LinkedIn, I just think it just serves you so many other tools that the others don't. So my first approach is like, let's say you have a certain like keyword or job title you have in mind. So for me, it was definitely social media, and I knew it was either strategist or specialist. That's just kind of like the titles I know based on the industry. So I guess that'd be like the one like piece of homework is like if you know the titles that you're looking for, or maybe there's iterations to it, because at least in marketing, like there's like 5 different ways someone can be titled strategist or just manager by position. So definitely just do your initial homework and see what's out there, because you don't want to be searching for job titles that maybe initially make sense to you, or maybe when you read it you're like, oh, actually I don't think this is what I initially thought or intended. Like for
Mhm.
me, I was looking at like social media or marketing associates, but a lot of what these other companies were looking for were like MBA degrees, and that's when I realized, oh, I guess like in this realm of associate, like I don't fit for that yet because I don't have an MBA. So that kind of helped me kind of check some of the off. So that's kind of first, like just understanding the lay of the land, what you have to work with. And then the second step is like once you kind of have those roles in mind or those titles written down, then you start searching for them. You start searching them on those websites. And I guess this is when other sites could come in handy on Google, because then you know that this company is actually applying to more than one site. Because I think that's one thing too that I like to check off for just credibility purposes. That if you see it on LinkedIn, that's obviously a great credible source, but it's also nice to know that there's maybe other sites that they're working off of. At least for me, that gave me that clarity that, okay, this job posting is also active. You don't want to be, unfortunately, applying to one that isn't. But LinkedIn also does a great job of notifying whether this position is being actively recruited for or not. Um, and then lastly, from that kind of step that falls into is like for me is I live and breathe by a tracker, and I love making my own spreadsheets. So once you have those list of jobs that you like, you are able to like note take the date, that the deadline, or for me, I found it super helpful to make note of any mutual connections I made, like whether they need a cover letter or not, or even they say when it's optional. If I have the bandwidth, I'll just make that extra step and do that cover letter. So just a ton of like just different columns and categories, and then just from there, you're good to go, and you're able to kind of start tackling. And that's kind of where like I'll bookend it with like the goal setting, because once you start recognizing a list of the jobs you could apply for, obviously there's a lot to go with. So let's say if you found only a handful, then maybe your goal would be to apply one a day or once a week. But if you see a ton and you're really, for me, like I was actively grinding and grinding, wanting to get a job within 90 days, I had goals of applying to like 14 jobs a week. Or at
Perfect.
one point I was applying to like 40 jobs a week for like 2 solid weeks. And it was a huge grind, but the tracker really came in handy.
Right. You make so many great points. Like from the first one, I think one of the key things that is standing out for me, and I try to share with clients, is take some sort of action, right? You said search the keywords, then you'll learn, oh, maybe this keyword isn't really appropriate for me. I shouldn't be looking for this title. But you wouldn't have known that if you didn't take that initial action. So I think that's a really important thing to remember for everyone is you can gather more information if you take
Hmm.
some sort of step. Don't wait till you have the perfect thing to
Yep.
go for it. So I love that. I also love the tracker. I am not an Excel whiz, but I do use it for for some tracking. And I created a tool for my clients because we'll do some coaching on understanding like their values, their strengths, what's important to them. And then I have them put together like, okay, evaluate each job to see, does it, fit within who you are, not what you think you should be, but who you are. And then ultimately, to your point, make sure that you are staying on track of who you're reaching out to, kind of call it a reach out plan, right? Who you're reaching out to, who you need to follow up with, and what you need. And not to date myself, but back in the day when I wanted to be in advertising, like you said, LinkedIn is such a robust, useful tool. So they didn't have that when I started looking.
For sure.
And you don't have to agree so quickly, but yes, they did not have that. You're agreeing to the LinkedIn being robust, but they didn't have that, right? So I knew I wanted to be in advertising and marketing. So I just opened up, Crane's top 25 ad agencies, and totally old school. I called up each of these agencies, got their addresses, typed up my cover letter and resume and mailed them. And then I set out a tracker, probably just on paper and pen, to say, okay, who did I reach out to? What was the contact information?
Yeah.
How do I follow up? And it's what you said. I knew I wanted to work at a top agency, so I went to like top 25, but it could be whatever criteria you want. And it's what you said too, if you have a certain goal, you want to reach it, you really have to go for it. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, and because I think ultimately it keeps you accountable. And I think if you're going to refer to yourself as a high achiever, you gotta also keep yourself accountable and stay consistent with how you want to set and reach your goal.
Right, exactly. I say that sometimes. I know clients are high achievers, and once they're in their job, they're totally going for it. But we'll use those talents and strengths for the search as well, right? Or if you're transitioning for a different job. So that's really helpful. Thank you for sharing that. And I know you have some really good tips that I think are a great way to just start out on LinkedIn. But again, I wanted you to share these because I think some people just avoid it. Like, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to look at it. But I think the tips you have are actually simple and approachable. So if you could just start with these, I think people would already be making a lot of progress. Do you mind sharing those as well?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they're definitely easy to follow, and I think too that's like what we face sometimes when we have to train people on platforms. Like for us, we're training physicians on how to use Twitter, and the last thing we want is to make it seem like it's just a chore or something else you want to do. There's already this like conversation how social media tackles your mental health and mental wellness, but I think these 3 simple steps will make it seem as just very approachable. So the first one, right, is just in creating your profile. Just like in any time you were creating an account, or even when you want to apply for something, you need to cover the basics. So a good profile photo, a cover photo, and just kind of filling out your bio. And I think all of this can just be taken from your resume, really. And sometimes headshots, people choose not to put them on a resume or not. I do. Just because I think that's appropriate for like the marketing industry. Is kind of, you are your own brand, so you want to market yourself in the best way. When it comes to profile photos, I've actually seen during the pandemic people take a more like less filtered approach. So I think really it just goes back to personality. If you have a nice headshot that you got through work, upload it. That's fine. If I would maybe stay away from like the selfie route, just because again, depending on just your industry, maybe you want to just make sure people can actually see your full face.
Right.
Right. But I've seen people during the pandemic, like someone's post kind of went viral on LinkedIn when she decided to post like something less done up with her makeup and hair and showing her glasses, and that really resonated with people. I think she was an editor, so I think, I don't know, within her cohort that worked for her. So it really just always depends. It just depends on what you feel comfortable. And with phones nowadays, you don't need to spend $100-$200 on portraits. Just like, even if a friend has a nicer camera than yours, just ask, do you mind taking a photo for me, and then sending it, and that works completely fine.
Right. Perfect. I think you're right too. This is a shift in the last several months, is with the pandemic, is people are just much more comfortable with not being as having a certain look. And again, it does depend on your industry. If you're trying to convey a certain brand, then you might want to be more put together or not. But I think the big thing you hit on is see the face. It's such a simple thing, but some people don't make sure that your whole face is present. And that's just a way for someone to get to know you in terms of like a first impression.
Yeah.
Great. So any other tips you would share?
Yeah, I think after that, once you have your profile all set up, the second step now would be, who you're gonna connect with, and that's kind of the same thing that happens when you create a new profile. It's like, oh, like usually you're already fed suggestions, but with LinkedIn it can be tricky. They'll immediately start asking, you know, to add your employer or adding any organizations you've volunteered for. So usually connections could be fed by that. But if you're just starting straight out and you're not, you're new to this area, let's say you're new to Chicago, you don't know who to go for. I mean, I would say alumni groups and alumni networks are very easy to leverage. I mean, that's for me, that's how I was able to find my first job, and my second job I was through leveraging alumni networks. And that was because I added my alma mater as like I followed their page, or like I just decided to connect my profile to the larger, like a Notre Dame alumni network. So I was able to find a lot of connections through that, and that were able to then, obviously connect me with other opportunities. So I think that's a great place to start, because I think a key to starting to build on a network is finding people that you have mutual connections or affiliations with. So that'd be the first step, is you're just starting out.
Yeah, I love that because I think it feels really authentic too, right? If you're new to the platform, you feel a little uncomfortable,
Yeah.
then it can help to just say like, well, okay, I went to school here. I know I'm really even if you have an interest, right, in a group, like there's certain groups
Yep.
as a coach I appreciate, like I love neuroscience, and if there's a group that's talking about that, I would join that because I love the content, right? And then
Yeah.
it feels like a natural way to, and I don't even like saying network, it's connecting for me, just connecting with something I'm interested in or people that I think would have similar interests in mine. I know
Mhm.
this might not be like a typical tip right off the bat, but something I love that you've shared too, and I've shared with my clients is, if there are maybe like companies or industries you do find interesting, and you don't necessarily have a connection to them, in my experience, I've reached out to people, or like if there's a book I've read that I love, I'll reach out to an author on LinkedIn and just connect with them. So I don't
Yeah.
know, you're laughing. Hopefully that's a good thing, but I'd love to hear your
No,
perspective on like,
it is. Yeah, because that's how I was able to also get interviews and be able to get just discussions with for a job. So I think there's that other context, like, can you reach out to a stranger, someone you don't know, but you know that they're a recruiter? Like that's what I did. I found a ton of recruiters for the jobs that I was looking for, because I knew that could be a shoe in to at least get on the short list. And you have to be bold with that, and they, I think, appreciate the boldness. I mean, if there's anything people know about each other, is like they love to talk about what they do and talk about like,
right,
any research or talk about their books. And so
right,
and I think that's another pro about LinkedIn, is when you're able to send an invite to someone you don't know, you can include a message. And in that message, you have limited characters, but you can say like, hi, we don't have mutual connections, but I love XYZ, or I'm interested in this job. Can we chat? I
yeah.
think if anytime you end a message with a call to action, they're also more willing to connect because you provided them a reason to, versus just saying, oh, hey, I like this company, would
Right.
like to be part of your network. Thanks.
Right, right, exactly. I have found too, and I'm always actually surprised at some of the people who reach
Yeah.
back out to me because, like you said, I think they appreciate that you're appreciating them. And if there's a
Hmm.
way, like something I also guide people say is like, hey, can we chat for 10 minutes or 15? Like put it in a
Yes. Yes.
context that's a
Exactly.
little shorter, and maybe even offering up, hey, can I serve you in any way? So like support you, and then it feels mutual, and I think you feel better as someone reaching out, and then the other
Yeah.
person will either say no or yeah, actually, can you, like, some when
Yeah.
I've done these kinds of discussions with people, helping them out, maybe learn more about coaching or something.
Hmm.
And I remember one woman asked, she's like, is there anything I can do? And she worked at a web design firm. I'm like, can you look at my website and tell me what you think? And she did. She gave me a beautiful little update, a report on
There
what
you
she
go.
thought, what she liked and what she didn't. And so it was really, yeah, it's a nice connection, and I appreciated
Hmm.
it. And I felt good about being able to, provide something in return.
Yeah.
Um, so as we're wrapping up, is there anything else you would say maybe about like setting up the profile, or anything that you would
Yeah.
share?
I would say, yeah, like once you have a profile set up, and then once you have a good solid, group of network of people you've connected with, then yeah, I think the third one is, keeping up to date. And I think that's something that people can tend to forget with their resumes as well, or their portfolios or websites, like after a year or so, or for me, after 3 years at my job, it's like, oh, I should probably refresh that. And it's just something you don't think about until you're ready to make that next move, or, you made that final connection. You finally made a connection with someone that you've been wanting to, that can give you like a more business, and then you have to scramble to update everything. Like, I think it's the last thing you want to do for a great opportunity like that. So I would just kind of try to identify a good time to update all of that, in addition to your LinkedIn profile. Like, if you're updating your website, make sure to update that link on the profile, or make a post about it. Just say, hey, I updated my portfolio. If anyone's interested in XYZ, check this out. Or, hey, I gave an update to my website. That's, again, like, LinkedIn is such an easy way to be like a bulletin board for you too, just to keep your followers and connections up to date on your own business and growth. Like,
Yeah.
you don't want people to wait to come to you to ask, oh, what have you been doing? You can be proactive and do that messaging as well.
Right. And it's so simple. And the way you're sharing it, just to build on what you said earlier too about emotional health, right? Like, when you're keeping things up to date, it reminds you that of the progress.
You're doing it too. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You're like, oh yeah,
I feel good.
I did it. Yeah,
exactly.
And we need to celebrate those little wins. That's what keeps us motivated. And I often tell clients, don't get attached to the outcome. Focus on the effort you're making along the way.
Yes.
And celebrate that, because we can't control the end result, but you can control what you're doing to get there. And then you need to celebrate those little wins. You start to feel good. And I think then you're radiating a different energy out there to people. And specifically your other idea around just, hey, I updated my portfolio. How will people know what you need if you don't tell them, right? It would be like being a business like me or any business we know. And like, I'm not going to tell anyone we're in service, right? I'm not going to tell anyone that I'm doing. How would that work? It would never work. So if you can kind of think of yourself as like, hey, just by a click of a button, it's amazing, tell all these people.
Right. And even too, like, back to your point, like, then your network can come and support you if you ask them for feedback. I think it's another great thing I find in the community of LinkedIn is, like, when you share a win, people want to celebrate you with that win.
Right. That's so true. And you know what else you're getting at that I think is really key, or I have noticed, is when some clients tell me like, oh, I feel weird putting it out there, or that I want to ask for help. And I remind them that, hey, someone might be out there needing your help. They need an employee like you. Why would you keep that to yourself? So if you could get in that mindset of like, maybe someone needs these skills, or, what I've accomplished on my resume would actually help someone else because they need someone to do it for their business. Why would you keep it to yourself? So
right. You just never know who's going to reach out to you. Like, even for me, when I know if I keep my profile updated, and you have just certain keywords that recruiters just look for on profiles, because they have their own tools that are able to scan through LinkedIn profiles by the hundreds. And if you happen to match it, they get your email, and you'll get cold called via email, and you get emails from recruiters about opportunities. Like, I'm not actively looking, but I get emails all the time just based on my profile. So you just never know who's going to reach out to you.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing all this. It's been so helpful. I know you've had some great success with it. I know you help other people as well with it. So I was so excited when you were, when we've met up and we've talked about it. And I know something else I want to tell the community is that Alaciel and I will be actually providing a longer format of this with different updates and tips on LinkedIn and career transitioning in the future. So we just thought this would be a good start and taste for what we can offer. And if you're interested, we will, I'll be sharing that. Yeah. And then before we sign off, I was going to say, is there any way if people have other questions that they can connect with you?
Yes. Well, yeah, I mean, invite me to connect on LinkedIn if you have any questions about the platform, any other tips and tricks you want to know, because there's just so much still more about, Facebook or LinkedIn Live, hashtags. Like, their LinkedIn is just adopting so much what Facebook and other platforms use. So I'm happy to continue to share any tips or questions they may have.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again. It's been so fun to connect with you, and I look forward to doing it again soon.
Yes, likewise.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.